I just want to always have, unlimited fulfilling projects. And it's not about success or money. It's about, I love this and I don't want this to ever end. Starting in college, there was this scarcity complex. And I have it to this day, even though I'm busier than I can handle, to be honest. But there's still this idea of, well, what if I never get to do this again?
Hey everyone, welcome to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. And it's a special crossover episode for the Theater Podcast. I'm Alan Seals.
And I'm Heather Vickery. Alan and I started off as two perfect strangers who met by chance and embraced opportunity. Listen in as we chat with other successful people about the risks they've taken to put themselves on a path to creative success. Alan, how are you today?
I'm good. I got my
sexy
hangover voice
you do.
Going on.
You do. And, who's with us today?
No, I haven't been drinking. Oh, who's with us today? We have none other than Ian Eisendrath, who has held various roles on the original Broadway version of Come From Away, which led him to a 2018 Olivier Award and a 2017 Grammy nomination. And then after the show's successful run on Broadway, Ian then music supervised the Apple TV film version, which just recently came out. It was recorded live on stage here in New York. Well, here for me, not here for you. He served as music director, executive music producer, and arranger, and his next projects now include a Disney live-action musical, which I can't wait to get into, and Lyle, Crocodile, which looks just so cute with Mr. Shawn Mendes as Lyle and Lyle the Crocodile. Yes. Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So good to be here.
We appreciate you getting up very early on the West Coast to do this with us.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. You'll have to forgive me if it starts slow, but we'll pick it up.
It's okay. Well, you've got sexy hangover voice too. You and Alan.
Totally.
What's your excuse? Did you drink?
No, I flew in from London a day ago. We just wrapped.
That's a good excuse.
A live action film, and now in LA, and dove right into a mix for a film coming out this fall. So I just haven't slept.
Ian, you've got so much freaking going on, and you're flying all over the world now doing live action stuff, and now you're prepping for Lyle Crocodile coming out this October, I believe, if memory serves. But I want to back up a little bit and start with basically the intro to what got you into music. Was there a specific touchstone, a moment, a chance that all of a sudden you were like, this is speaking to me, I need to follow this path?
Yeah, it was really vivid. I was a kid that was like really creative and interested in a lot of things, but definitely had not found a place. And I think my mom was even like a little bit like, what is this kid gonna do? Because he's clearly not like gonna just go hang out and play with friends, but also I don't think there was any apparent skill, talent, or potential. Maybe I think it was just more like, this is someone who clearly has a lot of creativity and decently smart, and there's an intensity to me as a kid. And then I went to see musicals, and I was young, and I saw, it's so cheesy, but I saw Joseph the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on the West End, and I think I was maybe 8 or 9, and it transformed my understanding of what's possible with this thing called music that I loved. I'd seen local theater, and just seeing something at that level at that age, and honestly I think Joseph was perfect because it's not a really challenging piece to engage with. And I was able to, but it's super, think about being a young kid, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's colors, there's lights, there's scenery, there's gigantic orchestration, and, the melodies were catchy and beautiful. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. And there was a really, really excellent local theater scene in Olympia, Washington, where I grew up. Like, shockingly amazing when I look back on it, because there was this semi-professional theater, semi-professional because they would use some non-union actors and also use union actors, but they really did high level work. The production values were really excellent. They would do really adventurous, challenging plays and musicals. And so I got to go.
This Fifth Avenue?
No, this is in Olympia. So
Fifth
this is
Avenue
called
Theater?
Harlequin Productions.
Oh,
And
oh,
just, you know,
gotcha.
it was a theater that existed in town. And then there was this thing called Capitol Playhouse. And Capitol Playhouse is or was this very intense, maybe too intense training ground for young theater artists. And we would sign up for a summer camp, and it wasn't cheap, but you would suddenly be part of this almost professional level production all made up of kids. Like I look back on it and like the scenery, the lighting, the costumes, the orchestra, what was expected of us was so high level, sometimes higher level than stuff I encountered in like the very beginning of my professional career. But it was also frightening because the teachers, directors who I learned so much from were also really demanding, really intense, probably wanted to be working with adults at times because they had such a clear vision and a clear sense of what this could be. But that really benefited us because it challenged us. And I remember being 10 years old. They did like a stunt casting thing. You know, I think they saw that I had some potential, and they're like, "We're going to cast you as Coco, who is the lead in The Mikado." And you know, everyone else was 16, 15 that were playing the leading parts. But I got to be in that, and then I just remember week 2 watching the music director, a man named Joseph Goodrich, who still is in New York and doing cabaret work and singing and writing and opera. And he was just this phenomenal talent. And I watched him do his job as music director. And I was like, oh, that's me. And so I'm 10 years old. I see this guy. He wears all the hats I want to wear. I think he is probably in college at this point, if not just graduated. And I love that he was the person bringing together everything that had to do with music, storytelling, acting, overall, just how the show is going to flow. And obviously, a music director is not responsible for the acting per se, but you end up touching it so much. It's like, oh, this is the person in the center of it all. And literally in the orchestra pit. And so right then at age 10, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I inappropriately started music directing things, like starting at, schools.
You're like, I'm going to take your job now.
Yeah, well, I did. I started at schools. I started just sort of asking every opportunity to music direct possible. And I also started directing just because I was like, well, I want to do this too. And when I was 14, this Harlequin Productions, I might have been 15, which was this semi-professional theater, I just wrote to them and I said, hey, I would really love to be your music director for this upcoming musical, which I look back and was like so precocious. And the really lovely artistic director had sort of seen me grow up. She was like, you know what? Let's do this. And so for all of high school, I actually ended up having a part-time that felt like full-time job being the resident music director at Harlequin Productions, where I was working with adults, professionals, doing some really challenging musicals like Assassins and Pippin, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, Pump Boys and Dinettes, creating new shows. And, it was this magical time for me because I didn't know to be afraid. And all I needed to do was just do.
Did you already have any background with playing any instruments or reading music or anything? Because it sounds like you went to see Joseph when you were 8 or 9, and then started performing as an actor when you were 10,
Right.
and then inappropriately taking over musical direction. But at some point there was
Yeah, I
learning
actually
instruments
started
in there. Yeah,
I started in piano at age 7. That was always an intense area of study for me. And I also immediately after that first experience where I'm like, I'm going to be a music director, I started in weekly voice lessons and theory and, just sort of learned everything I could.
I love that you said I didn't know to be scared. What's so profound? I have 4 children. Listeners know that.
I mean,
Probably
how
sick
old
of
are
hearing
they?
me talk about it.
No, I have
My
three.
oldest, do you have three? I have 17, 16, 12, and 9.
Oh, wow.
And some of them are innately scared, and some of them don't know to be scared. And I'm wondering if you were just born with it, or was it
Yeah, well,
Maybelline?
I mean,
Were you
look,
just born with it, or did your parents guide you
right.
down that sort of no fear path?
Well, two things. I connect with what you're saying because my three kids are 10, 13, and 16. And something that I have grieved was like the moment that I experienced my first child sort of start to become shy. And I'm not even going to say afraid, but aware of themselves in a way that is
Yeah.
like you're saying, it's innate. And I think I went through the same process. I think that I very much I think my parents did really encourage me, and I know they did, and believe in me. And my dad was this tennis coach who loved musicals and music, and he'd actually studied dance at UCLA with my mom, who'd done her master's work in modern dance. And so there was absolutely a
Mm,
fearlessness about the arts, and like no one was like, oh, by the way, this is unstable. Like,
that's
to a
nice.
fault, probably. But but then, so I was fearless, but I very much, for me, when I went to college, was the day that fear, awareness that you are not the only fish in the pond,
Mm,
it
hmm.
consumed me. And I would say that's something I struggle with to this day is that, and it comes from a passion and love for what I do. I just want to always have, unlimited fulfilling projects. And it's not about sort of success or money. It's about, I love this and I don't want this to ever end. And I
Mm,
think that, starting in college, there was this scarcity complex. And I have it to this day, even though I'm busier than I can handle, to be honest. But there's still this idea of, well, what if I never get to do this again? I walked into the mix stage at Sony. We are doing a giant film called Spirited, which is starring Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds, Octavia Spencer. I'm the executive music
wow.
director. We've been working on it for a year and a half. And that was the first day on the mix stage. And there's so much work to do. But that was my first thing is, oh my gosh, I don't ever want this mix to end because there's these incredible people I get to work with, which I derive a lot of joy from the team around me.
Yeah.
That's like I think one of the main reasons I'm there, and then just the level of work and the precision, and so I am now afraid, I would say, and it's something I'm always working on in my life. But as a young person, it really served me that I wasn't.
That's interesting to me. So my whole work, my professional work, is around embracing our fear and making brave choices versus attempting to be fearless. And I so honor that you feel that fear. When we have so much passion and love for something, it induces fear for just what you said. Like, I don't want to lose this, but also I think it informs how you go all in and why you're so busy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, it's like, as we all know, balance in life is so challenging. And I
Hmm.
acknowledge I'm too busy. And some of that is probably driven a little bit by the desire to just keep doing this and always do this. But you're right. I don't agree in that phrase, there's no love in fear, because I actually think there's a lot of love
Yes, there
in
is.
fear.
Yeah.
And I love that you're
Hmm.
saying embracing it because, like, if I didn't have that, yes, I would be passionate. Yes, I would, I think, do great work. But there's that driver. It's like, as
Yeah.
you said, fear can actually be something that helps us push a little further than we might if we didn't have that sense of how special something is, how limited something is, how unrepeatable something is. I just left London. I lived there for 6.5 months, and I'm I was so aware as I took off and looked out at like just the beautiful English country. I'm like, wow, I will most likely be back here soon, but it won't be that. And so, like,
It'll
I'm
be
so
different.
glad that I really was able to get everything possible out of that experience of filming that live action musical and living there. And again, the people, like, that's the thing is like, you'll never have that combination of people together again
Yeah.
at that time and place. And that's unrepeatable.
That's so amazing that you're getting these opportunities to work with individuals that previously seem sort of out of reach, I guess, more or less. And I'm interested to know your take on, working with Ryan Reynolds, Will Ferrell, Octavia Spencer. From what I know of what you're doing, the only public information about the live action is that it's Snow White. I think that's all we can talk about.
Yeah, you can say
I'll
Snow
leave it at
White.
that.
They announced Gal Gadot, Rachel Zegler.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's
Right.
an incredible cast. Like, it is.
Is Gal Gadot
incredible.
Snow White? That's what they announced?
That would be amazing. I bet she'd be great. But she's the evil queen.
The evil queen.
Yes.
Also amazing.
Yes, and
She's
Rachel Zegler.
She's my girl crush.
Oh my gosh, she's.
I mean, I'm a lesbian, so there are lots of girl crushes, but she's my one. She's my free pass.
She's unreal.
Gal or
She's
Rachel?
really unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like one of the most joyful people to work with.
So my question was going to be that when you're talking about embracing fear and going into these places, like Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell specifically, I don't think of as singers. I don't think that, you're going through all these things with people that are out of their own comfort zone. So if you, first level, are you in your comfort zone? Is there any sort of fear that accompanies all of a sudden being with company like this? And then how are you facilitating easing their fears, if they have any, of being like, hey, am I good enough to be here? Because even though the biggest star to the smallest star, everyone that I know always has a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Everyone, the most talented people you ever meet. I so agree with that. So look, I think there's two things. Am I bringing fear to these, basically starting these processes with each of these actors? The answer is yes. But it's like, it's actually it's any person whose work your responsibility is to support, enhance, help shape, co-partner to create. You need to have a language and a vibe and establish a way to work. And I think my fear coming into that is, I know that I have a very, very detailed, specific, high level of expectation that doesn't flow with just do your thing.
Yeah.
And the goal is, we want you to do your thing and we want you to be you, but we are dealing with music, we're dealing with lyrics, and these things are very specific. They happen in time. You only hear a lyric once, so where you breathe, the words you accent, the vowels you use, the way you hit your consonants, that can transform a performance. So for me, it's like, I'm always afraid of like, it's a very younger part of me that's like, are they going to trust me? Are they going to like me? Are they going to be willing to go on this journey with me? And I know, and I've been told by people I work with, that I, am probably more demanding and get in there and ask for more detail, precision, specificity than most. And, like someone like Ryan Reynolds, that made me, and Will Ferrell, it's like, are they going to be like, dude, I'm Ryan Reynolds, I'm Will Ferrell, like, chill out. You're lucky that I'm singing. Octavia Spencer, Will Ferrell, and Ryan Reynolds, it's like, they don't have to do this. And they could very much, and Gal Gadot is the same thing, be like, yeah, I'm not going to sing that. Like, I'm the movie star, and you guys are going to wrap the songs around me, which of course we aim to do. And bench past like Justin Paul, songwriters on all three of these projects, are always looking to support singers, but they also write aspirationally.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
And so, like with each of them, it was a different encounter where it's like, how do you balance sort of setting the bar, casting the vision of what you're expecting, but also not intimidating them? And I would say, each of them had their own process. Ryan is just such a, he's just such a boss, because he was just like, look, Ian, I don't have a lot of time, but I need to learn how to sing, and I only need to learn how to sing these songs. Like, I'm not ever looking to sing again.
Wow.
But like, to his credit, he took on that task. We would meet on Zoom weekly, and then we had 2 full weeks of rehearsal where we did 4 to 5 hours of singing together every day. And then we had recording sessions and we're on set. And like, he got in there, he saw the assignment, he sensed the assignment, and he executed. And
Yeah.
like, it was just, it reminds me of the empire that he runs. It's like why he can do that. Like my favorite
Yeah.
image is him on set dealing with like a phone call about his maximum effort, production company, his cell phone company, his football team, the choreography being given to him, me asking him to do something vocally, the director asking him, and he's just like, yep, got it, got it, got it, got it. And then he delivers. Just did ADR with him yesterday, which is when you go back and like record some words and notes that don't totally match picture. And I scheduled 4 hours plus another session. He was like, okay, guys, let's do this. And in 2 hours, we're out. So that's Ryan. And I think that he really did take on singing, and he really, really has a natural talent for it. And I think people are really impressed and surprised. He also had a vocal teacher. So like my world is much more in the coaching of the performance and getting the stuff we need from him, and shaping that and producing those vocal sessions and all that. He also worked with Liz Kaplan, who's a master voice teacher.
Yes,
And
the best.
she would meet with him once a week as well and work on overall vocal production and breathing. And he got in there and did it. Octavia, was probably my favorite experience. Like I'll never ever forget this.
Like how you call her an
Well,
experience.
no. I mean, she's an incredible
Working
woman.
with her as an experience.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
she's, I mean, by the
Yes.
way,
No, I get it.
deeply incredible human being. But she, was like, she listened to the song and was like, this is not what I do. And she is someone who, like what she's talked about, I think she started in a place of passion and fear and, really wanted to just like figure out a way to get through this without having to sort of completely make herself vulnerable and unpack her instrument and sing notes that she did not believe existed. And we approached it very much like a monologue on pitch. And we made this agreement that, look, if this doesn't work in a month, like, yeah, the song can be rewritten, and Benj and Justin will totally put it, in your register in a place that you want to sing. But would you, through your vocal coaching, voice training with Eric Vitro, and then the song coaching, performance training, which also, dips into vocal training too, but Eric and I sort of work parallel to end up with the results that we end up with. Would you just like go on this ride and like first take this incredible lyric, this incredible moment, and deliver it as a monologue? There's no better actor in the world than Octavia Spencer. And like her singing it or just sang it as a monologue, like that would have been enough. And then it was like, okay, so now I'm just going to play the piano chords underneath you. And it's just going to be like scoring. And that sort of started to take on this like vocal lyricism, still speech, but you felt like a little more of the arc. And then I said, okay, now we're going to add the rhythms. Don't over add the rhythms because we want it to feel natural. We want it to feel you, but this now exists in time. And then in a completely separate, non-acting approach, we're just going to sing the notes. So like you learn them technically. And we really separated all the elements, and she was amazing and came at it each day, willing and fresh and very vulnerable because this is a hard song. It gets really rangy. It sings in areas she doesn't, but it was like, we're never going to perform it. You're just going to work on the notes. And then there's one day where it's like, I think you're ready. Like now you can sing the notes. I'll accompany you. And we had to do this over Zoom. And it was one of the most riveting moments of my life because it's like all of a sudden you saw this actor singer born. And she afterwards started crying. And she was like,
Wow.
I get it. I can do this. And then, it was like from then on, like this singing, acting beast was born. And like what I love is that she sounds like Octavia Spencer. She's singing all these notes, but you're not thinking about the singing because you are so caught up in what is going on in her performance and the way that she's communicating what she's thinking, what she's feeling, what she's wanting.
I love that. I mean, Pasek and Paul are known specifically, I think, for writing that type of stuff. And I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, they wrote Dear Evan Hansen, they wrote the music for Dear Evan Hansen, they wrote The Greatest Showman, which my kids are still obsessed with. They listen to The Greatest Showman all the time. So they're like, "Can we go see that on the stage?" Like,
not yet.
One day, my sons. One day, my sons. All this will be yours. I want to bring this actually to Come From Away. Speaking of performance, because obviously there was this, there must have been some opportunity that you were like, I don't know what I'm doing, writing a musical about 9/11. That's weird. And then it's blown up, and now it is scheduled to play 670 performances to close, unfortunately, on October 2nd this year, 2020.
It's one of my favorite shows of all time.
God. But how did you originally get connected to Come From Away?
Yeah.
What was that encounter that you're like, I'm gonna do
that
this?
Is an encounter, and I'm the luckiest person on earth. So I started my career. I didn't do the thing most people do, and I think I benefited a lot from it. And then also there's some prices I paid for it. But I moved to Seattle, Washington, and became the music supervisor and director of new work development at the Fifth Avenue Theater, which is a theater very involved in sending musicals to Broadway and developing musicals.
I love Fifth Avenue.
I do too.
So you know David Armstrong? Do you know him from?
David is sort of responsible for, I would say, in many ways, my career.
Wow, small world. I love.
How do you know David?
We'll offline about David. He's got a podcast with Broadway Podcast Network, and his podcast is all about how Jews, queers, and immigrants made theater. Yeah. So I know David very well.
So I moved to Seattle. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to get to Come From Away, but my wife and I were like, I don't know if we're feeling New York. Probably fear was a big part of it, to be honest. And it's like, let's move to Seattle. And I went and met David Armstrong and Bill Berry, who were running the theater. I was 23, and the only reason I met them was because I was doing a summer stock where I'd done arrangements for the Rocky Horror Show. They were needing arrangements for the Rocky Horror Show, so they wrote to me asking, if they could have them. And so then I followed up and was like, hey, can I have a meeting with you guys? Met them. They were so instantly welcoming. They're like, hey, why don't you be an associate music director on Forum, if anything happened on the way to happening, in a few months. I went there, I did that. I was the associate to the really, really talented and wonderful Joel Fram, who's a Broadway music director. And they instantly kept hiring me. And then within 6 months, David and Marilyn Sheldon, who is the managing director, they pulled me into their office. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I was in trouble. And they're like, hey, so you're really young. And this is not traditional, but we would like to offer you a full-time salaried job as the resident music supervisor at the Fifth Avenue at age 23.
Wow.
And so I'm like, sure. And from there, I got to Fifth Avenue hires full orchestras of the most incredible musical talent. Seattle's an amazing theater and music scene. And so, at age 24, I conducted Sweeney Todd with the 24-piece orchestra and an incredible cast, and started building and developing Broadway musicals. So fast forward, I'd done Christmas Story on Broadway, came back to Seattle running the New Works department, and Kenny Al-Haddaf, who is a Broadway producer and also massive influence, board member, huge donor at the Fifth Avenue, is like, Ian, there's this show, Come From Away, which I'd seen a little sketch of at NAMPT, which is National Alliance for Musical Theater. And I remember it and being like, this is special. This is special. It was early days. So this was about 6 months after that. He's like, and I think we should develop it at the Fifth Avenue. I'd like to, come and do the very first workshop with the director, the choreographer, and can you help, put that together? Essentially, I would have been a producer of that workshop, as the Fifth Avenue New Works guy. And it's like, of course, and we did it, and David Armstrong, Bill Berry, totally supportive, embraced it. And the director's Chris Ashley, who's someone I'd really been wanting to work with. And Kenny called me, he's like, hey, David and Irene, the writers, the incredible writers, music director, got a summer stock gig and he can't do this. So I want to put you forward for this. And I'm like, oh,
Wow.
amazing. And so I met with David and Irene and we just like instantly clicked. They're two of life's greatest human beings. And we just really loved each other. And it's one of those partnerships where it's like we each have things we do and we really complement each other. All of a sudden, I was the music supervisor, music director, arranger for this 3-week workshop. And you're right. The idea of like a musical, we don't call it a 9/11 musical. We call it a 9/12 musical because it's really about what happened after 9/11.
After.
But
Yes.
everyone else thinks that it
Yes.
was a 9/11 musical. And
Yeah.
everyone's so skeptical. And the commercial producers, Sue Frost, Randy Adams, Kenny, and Marlene Al Haddif, they're like, look, we just want to do this because it's beautiful. If it ends up playing regionally, that's a win. If it ends up having like a very, very quick professional run at at a nonprofit in New York, that would be incredible. And so we do this workshop. Chris starts working on it. Kelly starts working on it. I start working on it. This was the first like, hey, let's do this with 12 actors. One day, Chris and Kelly drag out a bunch of chairs. What would it be like if our set piece was only chairs and tables? We stage the first 20 minutes. As we're doing this, it becomes very apparent that like music never wants to stop and that music wants to function like a film soundtrack. So in the room, a lot of the scoring that happens in between all the vocals is created and specified and developed. I, created the
Wow.
vocal arrangements on the cast because it's like you have 12 people. They're singers, but they're not like ensemble singers. So I don't think I've ever done more like in the room. Okay, what if you sing this? And what if you sing this? And what if you this? And just like making it up. And David and Irene are there, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Oh, we hate that. Please don't do that. That's too musical theater." We start adding some traditional instruments, and we did this thing where we just did like first week we just did a reading of it. Second week we did a reading, but we decided to stage, I think 5 to 10 minutes of it and do it. All of this was for like safe, tiny audiences. And the third week, we did more of a formalized presentation where 20 minutes were staged. Everything else was a music stand reading. I'm on stage playing piano, conducting, facing the audience because the band's on stage. And I'm always loving this show and feeling like, wow, this is unique and special. But then I look up and I start clocking that not only is the audience engaged like this, it's like this spell that's been cast on them, but everyone is like tearing up, laughing and responding in moments that have nothing to do with each other. And it was like, oh, they're all running their own script for that week, having their own really specific experiences that many of them have not been able to even approach. The number of people who were 9/11 survivors, who lost people in 9/11, who were profoundly impacted, that have come up after the show and said, I have not been able to think about this or approach it since it happened. This was the first safe space I could be in where I could actually process and feel those feelings. There were people who were in the Pentagon standing feet away from where the plane hit and watched like half of their office go away, that saw the show, and this was the thing that helped them heal. Not to mention, even if you don't have a 9/11 experience, we all have an experience of
Everyone does.
something suddenly changing, suddenly putting us in a place of the unknown and fear and chaos and tragedy. And it's just like, it was just so clear that this material connects to the audience. And from then on, it was like we were on this very well protected but constant development path from a first production at La Jolla Playhouse to the next production at Seattle Rep, to the next production at the Ford's Theater, to an out-of-town commercial tryout in Toronto, to Broadway, by way of stopping in Newfoundland and doing the show as a concert
Wow.
for the people whose story and often words
The
were telling.
actual
Oh, I have
people.
chills.
In
Yeah.
the ice rink.
Yeah.
And like I'll never forget that moment. So Come From Away has been a dream, and then we do it, we set it up around the world, pandemic hits, and suddenly we're offered the opportunity to create a new version and do something that will hit living rooms and try to give them the experience of being in the theater, which is interesting because it's like, oh, well, that's just filming the show, in the theater. It's like, actually, it's not, because there's
Right.
no way that a camera sitting in the house is going to give you the experience of being in the room with the people and like being able to see them and hear each other. And so great care and time went into how do we get an audience in the midst of COVID? How do we do this so that we can get cameras up close, behind, around, but also do it in 4 days, as opposed to
Wow.
something like Snow White, which just, we filmed for 4 months. And it's, continuing into CGI and VFX for the next 3 months. So it's like all this planning had to happen. And then, the post process was our really wonderful director, Chris Ashley, um, just looking at hours and hours of footage. I think we had like 8 to 10 cameras filming for 4 days straight. And so basically, like, how do we create the audience experience but get everyone up close? And then on a music side, it's a nightmare because in a theater, everything can coexist at the same time. But in a film mix, you want to get all the live vocals, but those have to be totally silent. Like everything around them has to be silent. You're not on a
Yeah.
soundstage.
You need everything on
Oh my
multi-track.
gosh. And then we have
Yeah.
live instruments on stage. We have pre-recorded band checks. Come From Away, like my favorite thing about it is like the ensemble vocals function like score as well. So they are often
Right.
singing while people are speaking, or lead vocalists are singing, and they're always providing this orchestration. In addition to the orchestration, we had to get that separately. So there's just a lot of work involved in how to record, how to capture, how to film, then also to get a full couple run-throughs with the audience so that we can get the audience response. And it was fascinating. We had to all live in a hotel for 30 days.
Wow.
Couldn't leave, couldn't go home. And for me, it was an interesting time because I had already agreed and started Spirited, which was filming basically, or her starting rehearsals the last day of Come From Away shooting. So it's this time of like prepping for a big movie musical and also figuring out how to do this really unique beast of a theater piece for film.
And didn't you get the original cast back together for the first time since opening?
It was
I mean,
it wasn't all of the original cast because something that was decided, which I think, it's tough. It was impossible to decide who should play these roles. But basically it's the cast that was going to come back once Broadway reopened, plus Jen Colella because Rachel Tucker was in London and unable to get over here. So Jen came back, which was huge because Jen is our captain from day one, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but it had some newer cast members, and very much the idea was like everyone, all of us. I had another Broadway show in previews on the day that everything closed.
Diana?
Yes, and that we all went home and everyone was out of work. So the idea was, well, we can't, like, we need to like stay loyal to and support the cast that is going to be coming back and that lost their work. And they're
Ian, was
amazing.
Josh Breckenridge involved in that
Oh,
at all?
I love Josh. I love Josh.
we interviewed Josh months ago.
Oh, great.
You got to work with him.
He
Yeah.
was. He is one of our 6 standbys who's been with us from day one. And they are the reason the show can play the way it plays because there's generally someone out. And these 6 people
Yep.
have to learn these crazy
Yeah.
tracks that are not ensemble tracks or one like, oh, I'm playing a lead and I just sing these songs. It's like the math and the choreography and the vocal tracks and the timing that these people have to learn for up to 6 different tracks is remarkable.
All right, one more quick break. Hang on a second. All right, here's the rest of the episode. So, Ian, what is the next chance that you think you are going to take? What's something that you're evaluating
Ooh,
right
if you
now?
can
Like,
tell us.
I'm nervous, I'm fearful, but I think I'm gonna do it. Can you give us a hint?
I can give you a hint. There is a project that was offered to me that would take me out of town for quite a bit of time, and it feels like a really, really big commitment. Like I love big commitments, but it's like years.
Wow.
And so it's all in process, and we'll see where it lands. But I am willing to take that risk because I think it might be something that's really, really sort of groundbreaking.
That's exciting. That was
The Greatest Showman 2, Frozen 3.
Exactly.
it was
Hold on.
one of
Yeah.
my questions though for you, Ian, was how do you decide which opportunities to follow and which ones don't feel right? Is there some sort of gut intuition? Is it who's on the project? Like, how do you decide?
It's got intuition. It's like,
Yeah.
A, am I the right person for this? B, and it doesn't have to be that I have to have done it before, but just like, am I, there are a couple things that have been offered that I'm like, that'd be really fun, but I know there's going to be someone that's their thing and that's not my thing. And then, I'm always drawn things at the high level. Like for me, there's something about working with the absolute highest level resources in terms of artists and the ability to do the job. And then I'm looking at like, does the material just excite me? And there's generally a feeling of like, I can't not do this.
We say this all the time that like never stop learning, never stop. Never stop. Oh, keeping your mind open.
Yeah. I mean, that's been my favorite thing about what I do is like travel, not travel in terms of vacation travel, but like just living in other
Life travel.
cities and cultures.
I love that.
That's beautiful. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. We need to let you go because God, I want to talk to you forever.
You guys, it was just a joy to talk to you at any time. Like, thank you so much
It was so fun.
Take care.
I don't know how many times I felt and actually said out loud, that gives me chills. Like,
Yeah,
there were so many
just-
moments where Ian is experiencing something that is so life-changing and so unique and so incredible. And he shares it in a way that I'm like, oh, wow.
So he put himself into a position at a young age in his teenage years where he was unafraid. He didn't know to be afraid, and therefore created this foundation by which he could build on into his late teens and early 20s of all of a sudden being holding himself to a much higher standard that adults still sometimes aren't even held to. Because, yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to say / ask to him when he's talking about working with all of these incredible celebrity artists, and he said, they could push back, I'm the talent here, you have to accommodate me, is I imagine true artists are so thrilled to work with someone as passionate as him, to trust his vision because they know that he's going to make them better.
That's leaning into fear again, embracing that. Even if, your top stars, Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, Renee Ziegler, all these people who can show up exactly like you just said and just say, I'm going to do it my way, screw you guys. Mm-hmm. But instead, they're like, you know what, I'm going to, especially his story about Octavia Spencer, right? I'm going to trust that the journey you want me to go on is going to work for me, and I'm going to just give it my all. And that, I think that speaks to a lot of actors and people in the creative space anyway. They get to the next step. They get to their next evolution in their lives because they're embracing that opportunity to, I guess, give up a little bit of control and learn again. We go back to learning, to learn from these people who know things that are different from them and believe in them and know that they can help this person, mold the raw clay into this finished character, this finished product, this finished song, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Yes, cool. He's a neat guy. I am, maybe more than anyone else we've ever interviewed, I love following the path of chance with him. Like, there are just so many, like, right conversation at the right time, right place at the right time, right, just being there and getting that intuition and going, yeah, we're going to do that. So cool.
Yep. And now, the next project that obviously we don't even know about, if we just hinted at it, like it's the same thing. He's just evaluating everything and seeing where it's going to go. I absolutely love that. It's great.
I can't wait. Very cool. Well, folks, we hope you loved it as much as we did. We want to hear all about it. You can connect with us on Instagram. We are Was It Chance on Instagram. Send us a DM, or you can email us at wasitchancepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us how you're out embracing opportunity and chance and what you're doing. We hope that you continue to follow us on all of the appropriate platforms and share these episodes with your friends.
That was nice.
Yeah, thanks. I just did
Yep.
that on the fly. Yeah, I didn't have that
All
scripted
right.
or anything.
Well, you've been listening to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risks for your creative life. I'm Alan Seals.
I'm Heather Vickery. Until next time, take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.